We do have a lot to talk about today, and I have some guests scheduled, but some of these things are tentative at the moment. Raul Labrador was going to join us today from the Republican convention in Cleveland, but he's tied up in meetings. So we're going to try to get Steve Yates, the chairman of the Idaho Republican Party, the statewide chairman. He's also at the convention. Although they told me they said it's going to be a situation where he could end up being called into a meeting and might not be available. But we're working on that. And then tomorrow on air, we're scheduled to be joined by one of the actual Idaho Trump delegates. She was a Trump delegate from way back. She is a former state legislator by the name of Janice McGee, and Janice is scheduled to join us tomorrow on the program to have a little discussion as the convention begins its wind down, and then the folks will all be coming back home. So that's a little bit of an outlook. We may have a guest coming up from City Hall today here in Twin Falls. I'm not sure I've got any details on that, but we'll see what we can do as the show moves on. I dropped an email over to City Hall and said, hey, what's the topic today if we're going to be doing a topic? And number three, Jeremy Daly is going to be joining us from Tripp Family Medicine. And we're going to have a discussion today about some GI issues, which if you're at work and you're normally talking about these, people say TMI, 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 and they walk away from you. But most of you will have finished your breakfast by the time that segment starts, or so we hope. And so we'll be talking a little bit about some of those things, those uncomfortable moments you may have if you eat the wrong thing and, you don't have any Pepto around the house. 8 minutes after 8 o'clock, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Look, I do have a lot to talk about today, and I'd like to start out with something that I happened to see in the Los Angeles Times this morning, which is a very liberal, well, it's from California. Los Angeles, obviously, doesn't that explain it, right? It's a left-leaning newspaper on the left coast. And a writer by the name of James Kirchick. Now, he claims he's not a liberal. He is a fellow with the Foreign Policy Initiative. And he's written a book called The End of Europe. That's will be released soon by Yale University Press. So he's apparently one of these guys with a long pedigree and probably has, traces his ancestry back in the U.S. to Plymouth Rock or somewhere, and therefore feels that he has the ability to tell all of the rest of us what we have to think and what we have to do. My guess is he is part of that Never Trump movement, if not a liberal. And he is saying that if Trump wins, a coup isn't impossible here in the U.S. In other words, the military ousting Trump and taking over. Now, I'm going to tell you why I think that this is a harebrained idea and why he is absolutely wrong in just a moment. But I'll share a couple of paragraphs with you. Mr. Kirchick writes, try to imagine that a situation in which Trump commanded our military to do something stupid, illegal, or irrational, something so dangerous that it put the lives of Americans and the security of the country at stake. And he goes on to say, faced with the opposition from his military brass, Trump would perhaps reconsider and back down, but what if he didn't? What is this notion that somehow Trump is going to say, oh, there's the red button, let's push it and see what happens? I mean, this notion that he is somehow not stable has been passed along, and it's the recurring theme from the American left and the Never Trump gang. But this is a guy who's made billions of dollars because he actually is quite stable, and he's already said he doesn't want to fight the Chinese or the Russians. He would, he doesn't believe that some of the wars we fought in the past 15 years were necessary. So why do they keep saying that he is going to be a loose cannon in the White House? It comes down to that fact that he said, look, if we grab a guy by the name of Abdul on the battlefield, and we know that Abdul has been killing Americans and he's plotting some major attack that could kill hundreds of thousands of Americans, or even if it's just a few hundred, well, we might have to waterboard him. And the liberals all said, oh, waterboarding would be illegal and the military wouldn't want to do that and it would hurt their feelings. Give me a break. They shoot people, don't they? It's 8:11. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. And this writer says, previously in those rare situations when irreconcilable disagreements have arisen between America's civilian and military leadership, it is the latter who are ultimately deemed out of line. This was the case when President Truman fired General Douglas MacArthur during the Korean War. Well, that, of course, was 60-some years ago that took place, and it was not necessarily a popular move. Now, I bring all of this up because apparently they think that the American military is absolutely in love with Hillary Rotten Clinton. And here we have a fellow by the name of John Tigan. He was at Benghazi, Special Operations. He was speaking yesterday to the Daily Caller. And John Tigan is saying, because all of these people in media who think that the military is filled with fellow travelers, I got news for you. I've seen the polls. A friend of mine currently serving in the Army, he's based up in Alaska. He sends me the polls from the Military Times, and the Democrat Party is not a popular outfit when it comes to the military, and in fact, many times is seen as comforting the enemy. This is John Tigan, and he is speaking to some reporters from the Daily Caller, and he is asked during the course of this conversation, what would happen in the military if Hillary Clinton is elected, especially to the special operations?
There's guys leaving now just because of that, because they don't know what the call.
Hold on a moment. I know I have it here. John Tigan speaking to Daily Caller.
There's guys leaving now just because of that, because they don't know what the call for help is going to be heard. Wow. They don't know if guys are going to, because it isn't just in Benghazi that's happening. It's happening even overseas, because this administration, the way they think, and Hillary Clinton thinks the exact same way this administration thinks. I mean, that's a hard thing to swallow, especially growing up. I know just me growing up and as an American, I always believe if an American, especially a serviceman or even just somebody that's serving overseas for the country, if you ask for help or you need your help, you expect the military to come help you.
And of course, they didn't, which set up the deaths of 4 Americans who were tortured and killed at Benghazi September 11th, 4 years ago. And we still have media in denial about this, and the Democrats, of course, ran a sophisticated cover-up operation, and it didn't cost them anything, because once again, their media allies kicked into overdrive to defend them. And all of the rest of the folks out there who vote for Democrats because, where's my free stuff? They all got involved with this as well, and they thought, well, who cares about those guys? As long as I go down and get my food stamps, I'm in business. 8:14 now. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. 736-0300. That's 736-0300. We have a caller with us. Caller, you're next on the air.
Yes, Bill, sometimes the media gets its job done, the liberal media, the mainstream media. When I talk to people about what they're going to do and about Donald Trump, because I make it a point to talk to my fellow man, wherever they are, and I'm not shy about it because we have to care. But they all seem to be conditioned with this idea. And I don't think they're just saying it because that's truly how they feel, but they want to make sure they preface their statements with the fact that, well, yeah, we want to vote for Trump, but he seems to be a little bit of a loose cannon. And I say, well, I think to myself, are every one of you thinking this, or is it just because you've heard it and you don't want to appear like you're totally in the bag for Trump, so you preface your statements, and I get the feeling that it's all just because of conditioning from the media, and see, in some cases, it's working, and it's a dirty shame, really, because I don't want any conditioning coming from any of this mainstream media. Okay, and then one more thing, I'll hang up. I watched 13 Hours the other night. I hadn't been, I thought I knew but when I watched it, you realize how infuriating and what a stupid tragedy this was. And the plane sat on the tarmac, and they were waiting to receive the order. And this administration and that bag, yesterday she was described as somebody's housekeeper. I'll hang up. Thank you.
Housekeeper. Thank you. That's her, all right. I think we have another caller with us. And caller, you're up next. You're on the air at 8:15 on KLIX.
Yeah, good morning, Bill. I know the news people are making a big deal about this speech that Mrs. Trump's wife, because apparently he's part of her speech from Michelle Obama. And that's going to be a great joke, but I can't do that.
Oh.
I have to tell you, too, word by word, I'm sure there's plagiarism somewhere. So I guess I would tell you have a nice day, but I'm sure somebody else said that, too, so I'll just hang up the phone.
Thank you much for the call. Yeah, I was just cutting a short video on Facebook before the program. I do these, if I can, I try to do a live video before the program to preview what we've got coming up. And if she was going to plagiarize, if she had said, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country, maybe that might have been a little over the line. But because she used the words a or or the or and, somehow she's a play. We listened yesterday to the comparison side by side. I can't say that she was plagiarizing any great literary work if that was the case. I have an email from a fellow by the name of Butch Elzey that just came in. Butch Elzey once took me to Walter Reed Army Medical Center when it was still, the main mission was still open in Washington. They've since closed most of that down and consolidated it at Fort Belvoir and some other locations in the D.C. area. We went there. We did a barbecue for wounded warriors some summers ago, many years ago, maybe 2011 or so. And Butch just sent me a message, and he said, because he still does these barbecues and the like for our wounded warriors, and he's very tight with a lot of people in the military because of that, especially in the Washington area. And he just sent me a note and said, Donald J. Trump is very popular among these people. No surprise there. Just like he is with police officers. You're up next. You're on the air. It's coming up on 8:18. Go ahead.
Morning, Bill. I don't know rather what she said was plagiarism, Melania Trump talk, but I do know that Hillary Clinton's spouse certainly can't get out to talk about it, his word being his bond. Take care today, Bill.
Hey, thank you very much. Yeah, again, Hillary Clinton should be going to jail. And yet, the liberals are like, oh, Melania Trump, oh, she said, my parents taught me the value of hard work and dedication. You know what? Michelle Obama said the same thing. Oh, well, come on, folks. We have better things to do here, don't we? This is Lieutenant Colonel Alan West being asked if the plagiarism bothered him.
I don't give a damn. I really don't. I mean, I spent 22 years in the United States military. I'm concerned about the fact that we have aviation maintenance crews that are out and they are going through boneyards and they are going through museums trying to scavenge parts to keep our aircraft flying. I'm concerned about Islamic jihadism. I'm concerned about the unemployment rate, the growing debt, and the deficit. I'm concerned about the fact that we see the rise of Iran, Russia, China, and North Korea. I really don't give a doggone about her speech, but in the media, they do a very good job of yelling squirrel, and like bird dogs, we go, running off, and we forget about what the real focus should be.
$20 trillion in debt, ISIS on the march, Americans still struggling to make ends meet. But you know what? Melania Trump may have used a line or two that were used by Michelle Obama years ago. Oh, goodness gracious, the world is coming to an end. My husband and I won't be able to fondle each other today. Those are the issues the left cares about. They don't give a red rat's patootie that the economy collapses, that the country collapses, but it's all about their own self-gratification and their strange lifestyles. Let's be honest about that. And if that's what they believe, then they are enemies within. 20 minutes now after 8 o'clock. Bill Colley with you. Jeremy Daly will be joining us in 15 minutes from Trip Family Medicine this morning, talking about some gastrointestinal issues. It's not pretty, but we all have to deal with it from time to time. So some details on the way with that. We may talk with Steve Yates, chairman of the Idaho Republican Party, in the next hour. He's in Cleveland at the National Convention. I want to mention again, Jeremy Daly will be joining us in about 10 minutes from Trip Family Medicine right here in Twin Falls, Idaho. We may have a guest coming in from City Hall just after 9 o'clock, and possibly Steve Yates, chairman of the State of Idaho Republican Party. He's at the Republican National Convention, and he may be able to join us in the next hour of the program as well. I do want to remind folks that we're looking at a temperature tomorrow, maybe in the triple digits. I'll get to my telephone callers in just a moment. Hold steady. But I've got to mention this. We're looking at some really hot weather over the next several days. We'll have some cooling off here and there, but for the most part, it may be our hottest stretch. On the other hand, not many more of these days left. Winter is coming, and that's why you need to test out your unit for heating before winter gets here. And you might want to call the folks at Ramsey Heating and Electric in Rupert. They, by the way, will make sure it's done right the first time. Problem-free, cozy winters are found at Ramsey Heating and Electric. They're located at 2600 Overland Avenue in Burley. The telephone number is 678-0459. Ramsey Heating and Electric, where they sell warm winters and cool summers. You're on the air. You're up next on KLIX.
Good morning, Bill. Michelle Obama is a plagiarist also because she took what my father told me 60 years ago. And and what we as parents and what I as a parent have tried to pass on to my children, that it's hard work to get you there. So she's a plagiarist. So why are we making big deals about it?
That's a good question. We have very few people in politics, too, we should note, who actually, thank you for the call, who actually write their own material. Richard Nixon was known for writing out in longhand many of his speeches, even though he had a great speechwriting staff. He had, in fact, Ben Stein, who's an Idaho resident sometimes. Ben Stein was on the speechwriting staff among some of the others. Pat Buchanan would assist him, but Nixon for the most part, and Ronald Reagan too, could write out a lot of the long form stuff. And then Ronald Reagan would give it to Peggy Noonan and she'd clean it up maybe a little bit. But after that, most people in politics the last 30 years have had they hire a bunch of pros, the pros write it, the politician looks it over and says, okay, I'll read it. They put it up on the prompter and that's it. 826, Bill Colley with you on Top Story. And these issues of plagiarism, Joe Biden said one time after he got caught plagiarizing a speech from a British politician, he said, everybody does it. And it hasn't been a big deal if it's a Democrat. I'm telling you right now, they get away with it. The other guys, not so much. And if you ever wondered if there was perhaps some bias in media, folks, don't you think that answers that question? It's 826. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Media also having a cow this morning because of remarks made by Ben Carson last night. Carson, one of the speakers at the convention on night number 2, and they're angry because this was not in his prepared remarks that were distributed beforehand.
This is a nation where every coin in our pocket and every bill in our wallet says, "In God we trust." So are we willing to elect someone as president who has as their role model somebody who acknowledges Lucifer? Think about that.
And he's talking about Hillary Rodham Clinton, if you didn't know. So we're over at MSDNC, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of the Clinton campaign. The folks there covering the convention, all of the men up in the booth, started talking about it, and they were not happy.
But Ben Carson kind of ripping a hole in the script there.
Well, he said Hillary Clinton was a disciple of a devil worshiper, basically. I mean, That's what, it didn't for Saul Alinsky. He went off script. He's a very religious man, and he believes in a pretty literal interpretation of Scripture, and that's Ben Carson.
If not a literal interpretation of the RNC second night programming schedule.
When you're running a campaign, you're sitting backstage and you're following along, reading the text, and all of a sudden when you see Saul Alinsky and it's not in the text, and you got to Lucifer, oh my.
How dare he tell everybody who Hillary Clinton's boss is. You're up next. You're on the air at 828 on Top Story.
Yeah, I really get sick and tired of hearing, when our guys do stupid things like plagiarize speeches, that we compare it to what the Democrats have done. And we say, well, they've done it before. And then they do the same thing back to us. Every time freaking Democrat does something, they talk about George Bush. And if you read the speech and you look at it side by side, it was pretty much copied word for word. You run it through the college plagiarism software, and it says it's plagiarized.
Now, should we be hanging Melania Trump then?
No, what we should be doing is saying, you're right, she plagiarized it. This was wrong. And we should hold whoever wrote the speech accountable. They should bring him out and say, you know what, we fired the guy. He obviously plagiarized it from someone else, instead of trying to play this, it's okay because everybody does it.
Maybe we could bring him out.
Saying it's okay because Joe Biden does it.
Oh, well, if a fool does it, I guess maybe other fools can do it too. I do thank you. Maybe they could bring the guy who wrote the speech out on the stage and paddle him. That would make the folks over at MSDNC happy. In fact, some of them actually are into that sort of thing. I just don't think it's a big deal. I mean, is it stupid to plagiarize somebody? Probably, because somebody else will find out about it. But as Alan West said, good golly, we have so many huge, intractable problems in this country. And this is what you're complaining about? Give me a break. It's 8:30. Bill Colley with you on Top Story. And my job is to defeat Democrats. I look at it that way. I really don't care that I hurt somebody's feelings that I made some sort of comparison. 65 right now because I agree with Ben Carson. That's the evil party. They kill little babies, chop them up, and sell their parts. Got it? We have better health with Tripp Family Medicine on the way in just a few minutes right here on News Radio 1310 KLIX.